what's causing this. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently because teens anxiety has been in the news for a number of years. We've talked about it with different people here on the podcast. And I guess like as I'm wrapping my own head around it, what I've been thinking and watching your documentary, I was thinking what I've come to believe in my own personal life is that it seems like it's come along with the rise of the helicopter parenting and with the rise of some real fear-based stuff where we're not letting 9-year-olds go to the park by themselves and everything in the world isn't safe. And this big rise in safetyism that is really hampering kids, where we're taking out every merry-go-round from the playground and we're not letting kids climb the trees and things like that. So to me, I think it seems to correlate really perfectly with that. And so you're a parent. I know you're not an expert on anxiety, but you've really dived. How does one say that? You dove into it deeply. And
I'm
you
knee
talked
deep.
about this.
Yes.
Yeah. Neck deep. So what are you seeing as like maybe in your own life as some of the causes from it? You're saying some of that catastrophic thinking, but how are we parents either feeding this or not feeding this, or what are some of the things that we're doing leading up to this experience for kids?
So I think there's a couple of questions to unpack in what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And so first and foremost, I think that what you're seeing in your observation is true, right? I think the world feels like a very dangerous place. But the truth is the world has always been a pretty dangerous place. Mm-hmm. And we just I think what we have now is more access to how dangerous. So there was a time where we had 3 channels on TV and maybe our parents listened to the evening news or maybe they didn't, right? But that's just not the world we're living in anymore. So I think all of that information comes at us at rapid speed. And so I think it's really important to understand the correlation to information. But I think to me, and what I learned in Making Anxious Nation, one of the things that I learned is that we are a terribly lonely and disconnected society. That's new. That's different, right? And that's part of what you're seeing, right? Instead of being on the playground playing with our friends or their friends, we don't let that happen anymore. Our whole notion of what it is to be socially connected has changed. The fastest growing religion in the United States right now is no religion. And for thousands of years, that was the place that people connected, right? Their place of worship. And so I think that there's so many things that have contributed to this loneliness and this isolation and this disconnection. And Vivek Murthy has been talking about this because it isn't just our devices. It isn't just social media. It isn't just what we're doing as parents. But he's now talking a lot about how do we combat loneliness in this country? You've got teenagers who identify as being 70% lonelier than people 65 years and older. That's a really shocking statistic to me. Our teens think that being on their phone, Snapchatting their friends, that's connection. They think that they have friends and they've never met them, right? They're just people they know they follow them on Snap or whatever their platform is. And I've had to have that conversation with my daughter. What makes a friend, right? A friend is somebody you spend time with. A friend isn't somebody that you just know, or even worse, don't know. And so I think that the whole identification of belonging for these kids has also been so greatly impacted. And I think especially for our kids now coming out of COVID, I don't think we've seen the worst of it. I think that will be a long-term, wow, this has had some very serious impact. Some kids, like my daughter, actually found being home during COVID calming. My daughter was in middle school during COVID, and so she didn't have to deal with the nonsense that most middle school girls go through, right? She didn't have any bullying happening. She didn't feel left out. She was not being invited to parties. Like, it was great for her. For me as a parent, I just thought, oh my goodness, how are we getting through this? Because she hasn't learned how to connect. She was coming from elementary school and then went right into high school, right? She missed pretty much 7th and 8th grade, middle school. That's a big leap. And so I think what we're seeing especially with kids who started high school right after we all went back to school and all the stay-at-home orders were lifted. And I think kids that went off to college really struggled. I think kids that started high school, had to start middle school, like those transitional experiences, I think they really struggled. And educators will tell you that they saw it in the classroom. Absenteeism is the highest it's ever been in our schools. And it's because our kids cannot bring themselves to be there. They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel safe. They're dealing with active shooter drills. The talk is constantly around things that their generation is worried about: global warming, war, the election, the world that they're inheriting. And in fact, they're having a really normal reaction to all of this.
Yeah.
And so there's that fine line as a parent with honoring that reaction, right? But also helping them build resilience and the coping skills that it takes for them to walk through this world with confidence.
Yeah, I see all that for sure in the kids. They're having a lot of trouble connecting. There's a lot of loneliness